Hey guys, Luke F1 here, back again with another video. Melbourne was absolute chaos. And today we're going to break down what we've learned, how the new fantasy F1 pricing algorithm is shaking out for future races, and how we can use this information to break down our team selection for China. So before we dive in, welcome to Luke F1 Strategy. If you're looking to strengthen your F1 fantasy game and gain edge over your league rivals, don't forget to like and subscribe because you are in the right place. So without further ado, let's do a quick recap of the race. As predicted, Lando had a pretty strong weekend, qualifying pole, leading from lap 1 right in the end. Lando taking the maiden win of the 2025 season. With Mercedes with a strong performance, Russell and Antonelli finishing 3 and 4 to lead the Constructors' Championship now. But the main talking point was certainly the six DNFs that caused major mayhem for fantasy managers, with many teams in the global leagues, even your private leagues, that have lost team budget due to the new algorithm. So, and more importantly, we got to see how the new F1 fantasy scoring system works, and it's already sparking discussions among managers about whether to prioritize budgets or maximize your points going forward. So let's break it down. Once again, before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, 100% a shout out to F1 Fantasy Tools, the data analysts, the people that have screenshotted releases, put hours of work into spreadsheets, mass probability, to provide us with this information that we need as F1 fantasy managers to really give us informed data to work through. So shout out to all of you. And there will be a special shout out to a particular member called Abraham from the Discord community, who has put a table together which is really going to help you to pick your teams for China. But before we get into that, what did we really learn from mayhem in Melbourne? And there's two main themes, I think. One is 100% the price algorithm is working. And what we'll see is that the smart managers are already reverse engineering how the game determines price changes. And to me, it's really exciting to see people applying data and then forming strategy from this, this is what makes the game fun. For me. The second theme that I think we are understanding from this is that there is predictability now. The formula, as it's written, as it's potentially intended, is that, in summary, going forward into China, all drivers and constructors who increase in budget in Australia will very likely, if not almost guaranteed, increase again in China. Those that lost value in Australia, they're going to have a very tough time to increase value again. So the more likely is that they're going to drop. So this really makes managing your budget choices, your team choices, really critical for the next one or two. So if you are a really committed player and you are looking to climb up those global ranks, you need to make some decisions on your team. Casual players in private leagues, you may have some players who are there for fun. They just want to go with the teams and drivers that they like the most. That's how they have the most fun watching the game. Once again, F1 fantasy and F1 is all about fun. Let's grow it. Let's keep the energy going. So if you want to play for fun, pick your good people, cheer, you do you. I am 100% on board with that as well. But for those that are looking for the strategic side, you have got some critical moves to make. So I referenced a table that was created by a user in the Discord community called Abraham. And this table, this one here, is giving us a summary of the drivers in particular. So what this table will show you is in the top 6, we have the driver who are classed in tier A, and then the bottom 14 is drivers who are classed as tier B. Okay. Now, I'm going to super summarize the calculation because I don't think that's really relevant for this table here right now. But what this table is telling is what points does a particular driver need to achieve in order to get a price increase or to see a price decrease. So as an example, if we take Lando Norris at the top there, Lando Norris, for the whole of the next week, the race weekend in China, which will include, he will gain points from the sprint race, the qualifying for the main race, and the main race itself. So there's 3 opportunities to collect points for Lando Norris and all drivers and constructors this weekend. So as long as Lando Norris scores above minus 23 points, he is going to see an A-tier price increase of 0.3 million. Wild. Absolutely wild. So as long as Norris finishes the race, he is going to see a 0.3 million increase. Conversely, if we take someone like a Lance Stroll, who is a B-tier asset, who had a good first week race performance. Now for Lance, as long as Lance scores above minus 5 points for the race, he will see a 0.6 million increase this week. Now, to highlight some opposite examples, let's take a driver like, let's go with Duan in the Alpine. So unfortunately, he had the opening lap crash, suffered a minus 20 in his race week. Now remember, the average scores are calculated over 3 weeks. So now he's starting at minus 20. So he really needs to have good performances in race 2 and 3 to outshine or to basically negate that minus 20. But if we're looking at it on a race basis, Duan needs to score over 28 points. Over 28 points to see a 0.6 million increase. Or you could say over 26 points to receive a price increase of 0.2 points. Now, that is quite tough. That is quite tough for a driver that's typically going to be in the mid to back end of the field, where you don't get points for qualifying below 10th. You don't get points for finishing a race below 10th. In the sprint race, you don't get points for finishing below 8th. So they're not getting any points for where they start the race. So they're really only mid to late tier, last tier, late in the field drivers. They're really relying on overtakes and gaining race positions to really get their points. And when you get a point per overtake or a point for position gained, you're looking at like over, 10 to 14 of each of those that Duan needs to get in order to get back onto budget. Now, we're not saying that's impossible to do, but it is very tricky to do. So it's kind of how the table's set. Like when you see green, there's a good chance that they're probably going to increase the next week. If you see red, it's going to be quite tough for them to see a price increase, and more likely see it to see a price decrease, not even stay the same, decrease. Moving into constructors, we have a similar type of format here. So the top 4 are tier A's, bottom 6 are your B's, and again, kind of what we're seeing is that Alpine is going to have a tougher time to reach a budget increase of 0.6 because they have to score more than 25 points, whereas a constructor like Haas, they only need to beat minus 4 points to be able to get a price increase of 0.6. So this is really making us think strategically about our teams going forward. So how can we apply this? And what's some examples? So early thoughts for then China becomes this to me. Swapping out budget losing drivers or those that were in the red category of that previous table, they are a priority to be swapped out. But are you able to do this within the rules of the game, such as you get 2 free transfers to change, but that might not be enough to really affect your team. So if you need more transfers to really improve your team, you have a couple options. You could take a more of a approach where you take where you go over and above your free transfers and you do 3 or 4. With that comes penalty hits, though. You may lose, you lose -10 for every additional transfer that you make. Or you could use one of the chips in the game to avoid losing points for multiple transfers. Now, really what it comes down to is how your week 1 performance determines your strategy going forward. And we've got a couple of examples that I'm going to try to talk through and to hopefully provide a bit of context to bring this all together. So in my private league that I have going, this is Amy's team. Amy's my wife. She's in the team with us, and let's just say she had a tough week. A team consisting of essentially Norris and Ferrari as her only assets that increased, as well as having 5 that decrease, being Bortoleto, Ajal, Alonso, Sainz, Alpine. I mean, I think this is probably quite a common team that was out there. So right off the bat, she's looking at a situation where going into China, 2 out of her 7 assets could increase. However, 5 out of the 7 could decrease. So net budget wise, she has a very good chance of just, no matter what points she gets, in typical predictability of the race, and assuming that Bortoleto, Hajjar, Alonso, Sainz are not going to be sniffing anywhere near the podiums, then her team is more likely to decrease because she has more assets in her team currently that are predicted to decrease than she has assets in her team that are looking to increase. Make sense? So, what strategies could she put into play? Strategy number 1, she could forego using a chip. Doesn't have to use that this week. She could have the option of doing 2 free transfers to get a couple of these decreasing assets out. Or she could spend an extra 10 to 20 points to change 4 to 5 of those assets to try and get her back into more of a better budget building team. Now, she lost a little bit of budget going into this week. I think she's down. I think she lost sort of somewhere between 1 and 2 million. So that would be something that she could do if her goal was to improve the budget, but not necessarily use her chips right now. Maybe once she wants to save them for the future, then maybe she takes a little bit of a hit with a -10, -20, and then sort of restart from there. Strategy 2 could be she could use her Limitless chip. Now, what Limitless does is this will give her basically an unlimited budget to use for the next race. The option she could have is she could use her Limitless chip for strategy number 2. Now, to recap, what a Limitless chip will do is this will give her an unlimited budget to use for the next race. She could then put in all the top 5 drivers, top 2 constructors, and she would gain points from all of those for the sprint race, the race qualifying, and the race itself. So this will be for those who are on more of a points-focused build. Maybe they just really had a very bad week. They're just wanting to sort of get back into their points. This would have a good chance of getting that. The downside is that when it comes to budget, you don't get the budget gains from the team that you put in. You'd only get the budget from the team that you had existing. So as we've already determined, is that she has a team of 5 assets that are declining in value. So she's still going to see a budget decrease. The third option that she may have is she could use a wildcard chip. Now, what the wildcard chip does is, again, give you unlimited transfers. So she'll take no penalties for making more than 2 changes. She still has to stay within her current budget from what she has. But she may be able to have a chance then to make 4 or 5 changes in her team. Don't take the minus points to do that, but really kind of put it back into a budget-focused team. So she may pick some assets that are more in the ascending category, so more in that green box from the table for both drivers and constructors. So then again, sort of, she's aware of points, but she's really just trying to make a big increase in her budget. So those will be things that she'll be thinking about this week. Does she prioritize budget recovery or points maximization? Now, going into my team, we can look at the assessment of my team like this. So I went with a team of Norris, Hulk, Lance Stroll, McLaren, and Williams, which all 5 of those assets are predicted or, to have a very good chance of improving in their value. And only 2 assets that are predicted to potentially lose budget value in Hajar and Duhan. So my current thinking for my team is, again, sort of like looking at a few different strategies. So if I take those same strategies and extrapolate them to my team, strategy 1, using a chip, saving that for future. I can still look at this and think, okay, I have 2 free transfers. I could look to swap out Hajar and Duhan and see if I can get in 2 assets that are on the aspiring side that will fit the budget. I could also do additional penalties, transfers that will cost me, again, minus 10 to 20. But because I got such a good haul in the week 1, I may have a little bit of points to play with to sort of avoid using a chip right now and to make a couple tweaks. So this will be a strategy that I might consider if I'm not too concerned about the points right now, but I still want to just sort of improve my budget without using a chip, while also still sort of keeping probably the 2 best assets in the game right now in terms of point scorers, which will be Lando and McLaren. I understand that Lando's is quite expensive, so points per million might be sort of a little bit sort of skewed for this one. But, if early races to sort of go by, Lando and McLaren, he's in a rocket ship. So the person most likely to get the biggest haul of points each week is Lando, and McLaren there to follow with that. Now, would I consider the Limitless and Wildcard? This is where it gets a little bit interesting. So if I use the Limitless, again, I get an unlimited transfers to an unlimited budget to put in whoever I want into this team. That would give me if I could predict the top 5 and the top 2 constructors of this week, my points total is going to be huge, just off the charts. The budget, though, will be based on the team that I currently have. And as we've said, is 5 out of my 7 will likely to increase and 2 will decrease. So the points gained, if I picked it right, the points gained might actually be may actually be quite high, which might help to sort of just kind of like build a bit of a lead into the global ranks and see where we go. Option 3 would be the wildcard chip. Again, what this will give me as many changes as I want. Have to stick within the budget that I do have. But I might have to do more than 2 transfers. And the reason I say that is because I can't just take Hajar and Duhan out and swap in for 2 other assets who are aspiring, because there isn't one that costs that much. So in order to sort of put my team into a situation where I have 7 assets that are likely to increase and 0 and kind of take out all the decreasing values, I would need to make 3 transfers minimum. So I'm kind of looking at least a minimum minus 10 to avoid using a chip. But minus 10 might be not expensive, might be, cheap enough to make the change without using a chip. and saving a chip for later on in the season. So those are a little bit of strategies that we're considering. I'm kind of leaning towards I don't know if I need a drastic overhaul just yet. I got lucky, I got lucky with only getting the with where whole control eventually finished. There was some little bit of knowledge used for that data breakdown, but let's be honest, that race was a lot of luck, and a lot of good managers made a lot of good decisions and were just hit by bad luck, which is what we have to expect with a game like this. It's just part of the game. So those are the things that I'll be thinking about over the next couple of days. But I just wanted to sort of get a bit of a deadline information out there for you that will be sort of going this week. So China, for a lot of us, will be on a different time zone. Myself, I'm here in Alberta, Canada, so we're on Mountain Time, it's typically 7 hours behind UK time, Greenwich Mean Time. Our clocks went forward a week ago, so now the difference is only 6 hours. I believe the UK's clocks go back in 2 weeks' time, so we'll change those accordingly. But here's sort of a breakdown of when the times are for this week. The main sort of deadline to know is that you need to have locked your team before the sprint race starts, which means that we get a chance to look at sprint qualifying. So we get to see where the drivers are going to end up on the grid prior to us locking our team. So for many of us in Canada, we all know that shortly after sprint qualifying finishes, which will be about 2:30 a.m. on Friday morning. For those in the UK, that will be about 8:30 on Friday. The times I have here are the start times. So one thing you need to take away from this video is you need to lock, if you're in Canada on Mountain Time, you need to lock your team before 9 p.m. on Friday, March the 21st. And for those in the UK, you need to lock your team before 3 a.m. on Saturday, March the 22nd. Now, the one thing I want to also remind people for those who are new to Formula One Fantasy, if you've been used to playing fantasy in different sports such as NFL, baseball, basketball, whatever it might be, you may be used to being able to tinker with your team through the week, like make some changes, swap players in and out, hit save, come back to it a couple of days later, see if you like it. In F1 Fantasy, it does not work like that at all. You only get one opportunity to lock your team in. So that one opportunity needs to be as close to qualifying as possible, because that will be the time when you get the most information, understand who's looking good, who may be not even participating. So for F1 Fantasy, one opportunity per week to lock in your team. Do it later, don't do it early. There is no advantage to doing it early. All right, that's it for this week's breakdown. So what's your strategy heading into China? Let me know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, if you have any ideas for Amy, if you have any ideas for me. We'd love to hear them. Again, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, get the notifications on, be made aware of when the next video is, and we'll catch you on the next one.